Let your dreams and your goals break your heart. They are the catalyst to the self-actualization that your heart truly wants, whether you realize it or not. This is something that I've learned over the years, and I'm going to share a really interesting story with you. It's been raining for hours, and it's stopped. So here's a brief window. I wrapped my camera on the outside of my car in plastic, just in case. So the first thing I don't want to tell you, spoiler alert, kind of, I just found out that in a couple days, on May 9th, Thursday, one of my songs is going to be on a internationally known television series that you definitely know about. And it's a song that I wrote during the dark night of the soul. And when I wrote it, I didn't have any agenda other than self-expression, and it was a very healing experience for me. And it was kind of right dab in the middle when I was very identified and reliant on the outcome of my music career. But there was this brief gap where I let all that shit go, and instead of writing a song with an ulterior motive, whether, to try to get it on TV or try to pitch it to another artist, I just let all that go. And this song emerged. And here it is years later. I haven't even really been trying with music anymore. I've just been focusing on other things. And now the song's going to be on a TV show. So, that leads me to a story. Essentially how I got to this point. We live in this day and age where people are either very afraid to follow their dreams, or it's something that's romanticized to the point to where out of nowhere they just quit their 9-to-5 job that is feeding them and their family, and they're like, I'm gonna go all in on my photography passion, even though I've only gone out shooting like twice. So there is a balance there, but there's something very interesting about letting go. This isn't something that can be quantified by science, but like the title of the previous video I put out, I've obviously been on a very specific rabbit trail. But when you stop wanting, you end up just kind of getting everything. And I don't know why that is, because, for instance, with this song, we're talking years and years of grinding and hustling, trying to get a specific result. And then, easily, from just letting go, it finds its way back to me. There is something about the law of attraction. There's like an energetic side of things that we can't really explain with science, and it's very difficult to put into language, but I'm seeing it in my own life on a ridiculous level. Like, it's undeniable. But essentially, if 5 years ago you would have told me that the main purpose of my music career and my dreams and all that was to eventually let it go and realize that it's not who I am and it's not my identity, I would have been suicidal. And in fact, I was. A few years ago, my marriage ended. My career that I had spent 20 years on did this dip. It wasn't going very well. And it put me in this state of receptiveness where my heart just began to open. And we're kind of faced with a choice whenever these catalysts come our way. We can either go deeper into anger and deeper into the attachment, like, no, fuck you, I'm gonna force this thing to happen even if it kills me. And sometimes you can get an external result that way, but then you miss the point of what it's trying to teach you, of what it's trying to show you. I really believe that human beings are much more than our identifications, or much more than our physical being and the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories from our past. I've been letting go of the past on such a deep level, and I don't mean like not acknowledging what happened and not taking the lessons with me, but I'm talking about like when I think of my father's death and him committing suicide, there's been so much healing from that I'm weirdly filled with gratitude now. Whenever I just think of my dad, I just get like these tears of joy because I see him in myself. I see the good parts of his being and his heart and his compassion and his desire for wisdom. I feel that, I feel that in every cell in my body. And as you start to self-actualize, you go down the path of individuation, as Carl Jung calls it, or enlightenment, as the spiritual folks call it. The veil of separation, man, it gets thinner and thinner. I'm literally talking to you with the same love that I talk to myself at this point. When I make a mistake, when something goes wrong, I wish I had a camera going at all times, because sometimes I do speak out loud. And I'm just like, hey, it's okay, buddy. It's all right. Just take a breath. You're doing good. Like the self, my higher self, reveals itself so often now in a very real way for me. If you would have told me that letting go was the whole point of all these ambitions and dreams that I had, I would have been suicidal. And a lot of times you have specific dreams for a reason. And I'm not talking about I really want to be a drop shipper just so I can make money and afford a nice car so girls will finally want to have sex with me. I mean, I understand if that's your desire. Human beings have lower base needs. And it's very easy to get hung up on those things. But whenever you have those needs fulfilled for a long period of time and then you don't, you're not like, oh my God, I need those desires filled again. You start to be like, well, I don't have these desires filled right now with sex or intimacy or companionship, but I've had it before and it still didn't fulfill me. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit the pause button on this and try to figure out the essence of my fucking being. Who am I? Why am I here? Why is it that whenever good things happen and I achieve money and bits of success and outcomes, I get this wave of excitement and then it disappears and then I feel the void again? Man, I'll tell you, that void, I don't really feel it anymore. And I'm not drowning in millions of dollars. I mean, my needs are met. I'm doing okay. But dude, I've got this level of peace now. I've got this level of love for myself and other people. And that's even the goal of these videos, just to speak to you. So that way you can feel seen. So that way I could be a mirror for you. And that way you could see yourself through me in this video and maybe feel a little bit less alone. All of the attachments, man. All of the things that we strive for. I've heard celebrities say things like, who said this? I think it was Jim Carrey. I know he's a pretty spiritual guy these days. I know he's pretty out there. I heard him say a quote once. I wish that everybody in the world could get everything that they've ever dreamed of, so that way they could realize it is not the answer. And there's varying degrees of that. Some people really do need to take it all the way. They need to grind. They need to suffer until they get all the external success and then still feel the void and be like, oh, fuck. They were right. letting go of your attachments, letting go of your story. It's not something that happens overnight. But there is an element of, you can almost decide within yourself when you've reached a certain level of suffering and discontentment, or this can basically be day one of your life. Because a lot of us, we constantly live through the lens of the past, our past losses, our past trauma, the good old days when you had this and you had that, and oh, if only you can get back to this place again. You can let all that shit go, man. This can be day one. You can create the reality and the character that you want to create. And that's why I always harp on healing, dude. When you go within and you heal all the traumas and all the things that are stopping you from being your true authentic self. Because the reality is, you don't really even have free will, if I'm being honest with you, until you heal a lot of your past traumas. Because every action that you take, everything that you do, is happening through the lens of your past traumas, and the fear, and the grief, and the sadness, and the anger. Everything that we do ends up happening through that lens. And you don't even realize it. So free will is kind of like not even a real thing for you until you decide to heal these things. Okay, so some brief history. I told you I would tell you a story. I was raised in a very Christian home, very conservative. I was only allowed to listen to contemporary Christian music. And this is like in the 90s, like early 90s. So like cheeseball Christian music, like the worst music imaginable, if I'm being honest with you. And I was really only able to listen to that up until I was like 12 or 14 years old. And my saving grace was coming across bands that labeled themselves as Christian, but there was an element of artistry to them that standard contemporary Christian artists just didn't have. One of the first bands that I really connected with, you've never heard of them, they were called Denison Mars. They had this album called Holding Hands at 35,000 Feet. And this album awakened me to the power of music and how deeply spiritual it can be. And I don't mean, from a religious standpoint. And so from listening to this band, it made me realize that I wanted to create music. I started to find other cool Christian bands that were like more underground, like cool Christian bands. There was even like metal and hardcore bands that were considered Christian, like this is back in the 90s. And so this all eventually led me down this path, long story short. In high school, I started getting into bands like Radiohead, Jeff Buckley. I kind of missed the mainstream music train, not because I was too cool for it, but simply because I wasn't allowed to listen to it early on, so I kind of missed that boat altogether. And so it wasn't a conventional path for me. I didn't even really get into the Beatles. Oh man, this is going to sound like blasphemy to any musicians watching this, but I didn't even get into the Beatles until I was in my 20s. And by the time I started listening to the Beatles, I wasn't even that into it because it sounded outdated to me. I really love and appreciate the Beatles now at this point in my life. But your path with creativity and goals, whatever it might be, building a business, it's not going to be linear. And your ego is going to try to tell you over and over again that your level of achievement will define you. And it's simply not true. Most of these things are simply catalysts. So that way you can fucking suffer and ask deeper questions. The whole point of this existence is for us to transcend these characters and realize there's more than this. You know, you can have the purpose to open people's eyes and to unapologetically just be yourself, you know? You might not have a calling to create a YouTube channel or something, or be front-facing. And that's okay. You know, your purpose might be just to be maybe a school teacher or something, you know? Like, just impact a handful of kids' lives and just give 100% to that. So my initial plan with music, you know, it's like after my father died, music took on an even deeper role in my life, you know, because it helped me heal so much. You hear a lot about how music is it's like this degenerate thing now. You know, a lot of big self-improvement guys are even like, hey, avoid music because it fries your brain. And music is like money. It's like this neutral thing that's very powerful, and it could take on the role of either polarity, positive or negative. And so music can be extremely healing. And once I started to really heal and experience this relief, in a sense, from my grief, didn't mean for that to rhyme, I decided that I wanted to make music to help other people, essentially. And it was I thought it was a noble cause, and it was initially, but really it was my ego thinking, I'm going to save the world with music. And so, anyway, all that being said, there was just a deep letting go. And it's cool that the impact that's being made now from me just being my authentic self, creating these videos, it's very unexpected. Had nothing to do with music. And now here music is unfolding anyway. It's circling back. So the song is called Hold the Line. It's going to be on Grey's Anatomy, May 9th, Thursday. And this song specifically is very significant. I've had some successes. I've even had a song on this show before, but it wasn't a song that came from a completely authentic place. It was actually written specifically to try to get it on some kind of like TV show. This song, however, I just wrote from a sheer place of authenticity when I was in darkness. And it was part of my healing process, and now it's being used and going to be heard by thousands of people. So go all in on your dreams and ambitions. And when I say go all in, I don't necessarily mean quit your 9-to-5 job right now. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself and your family. But go all in with your heart. Create from pure authenticity and pure genuine enthusiasm. Follow your highest excitement. I know that that's a very generic thing. But at this point in my life, okay, I'm 36 years old. Every time I have followed my excitement, the things that I'm genuinely curious about, I feel drawn to. No matter how big, no matter how small, the dots always connect somehow. Whether it's outwardly, like this, or whether inwardly, whether it helped me become more of who I'm meant to be. I know this video was a bit all over the place. I had no topic. I just knew I wanted to speak to you and see you and share these things. Check out the song. I'm going to put a link in the description. You are loved. You matter. And you've barely scratched the surface of what you're capable of. I'll talk to you soon.
When holding on feels like letting go, it's looking inward, taking us backwards. All the wires tangled in our heads.